Hey guys, it's Jess, and we're here today to talk about the top 5 most anti-democratic trends in American politics. Now, I don't mean that in the sense of conservative or Republican, but in the sense of impairing the impact that your vote and your political opinions have on the future of this country. So obviously, that's pretty serious, and it's relevant to this blog because it also impedes the ability of third parties to make progress in a system that's really rigged against them. So let's talk about them. Okay, number 1. Now, this is a law in only one state so far, but it's Michigan's emergency manager law. Now, you may have heard of this surrounding the controversy over the Flint Michigan water supply. See, what happened there was that an emergency manager was appointed to oversee the city of Flint because of their state of financial crisis, and obviously that all went really, really badly. What you've got in Flint is an example of the system that Michigan set up, in which the state government has the ability to take away power from local government in a really severe way. They can come into any local unit of government and say, well, your city or your town is doing so badly financially that we are going to replace your democratically elected government with an emergency manager appointed by me, Governor Rick Schneider. It's sort of a dictatorship on a very hyper-local level. And what that leads to is an ongoing state in which the people actually living in these places have no say over the governing of their communities at all. Alright, number 4, Citizens United. It's a little bit more well known. Citizens United versus the FEC is the Supreme Court case in which the United States Supreme Court ruled that organizations, corporations, and nonprofits have unlimited spending power in federal elections. And what that means is that a corporation or a nonprofit is essentially treated in the same way in elections as a human being. Now, what does that mean? It means that somebody with a vested financial interest in an election, they funnel their money through a corporation, they spend as much on a presidential race as they want, and in conjunction with the concept of a super PAC, which is a political action committee that you can donate as much money as you want to, this has basically done away with all monetary limits on campaign spending. Now, it's difficult to say how much difference money actually still makes in elections, because we are currently living in an age when ad spending is an all-time low as far as the impact that it has. But what's significant about this case is that it says corporations and other organizations are treated as citizens. So to any actual human citizen of the United States, that should be disturbing. It's saying that even though these people don't have the right, even though these entities don't have the right to vote because they're not human, they still have as much right to impact the political process as we do as voters. Now, that doesn't seem like something that should be part of democracy, right? Rule by the people doesn't include corporations. Alright, number 3, voter ID laws. This has been a topic of controversy lately as well. In 33 states, there's a law that mandates some form of ID when you're voting. Now, this can be a good thing, people say, because it prevents voter fraud, but actually there are very few documented cases of voter fraud. And what's wrong with this is that it often limits itself only to certain types of IDs. In Pennsylvania, for example, you got to show a driver's license, an ID of a government employee, an in-state college student ID, or an ID for a resident of elder care facilities. Obviously, there's going to be a huge chunk of voters who don't have any of those forms of ID. So if you don't have one, you'll have to obtain a specific photo ID for voting purposes only. Obviously, this can be difficult. It's a bureaucratic process through a state government office. You've got to get time off from work. You've got to know that there's a requirement for you to get this type of law, to get this type of ID, and obviously this is going to impact primarily lower class voters who may not have access to a driver's license or an in-state student ID. Now, the issue has been raised many times that these laws are passed primarily to disenfranchised voters, and it certainly does seem that they have the effect of lowering voter turnout in states where they've been passed, particularly for younger, lower class, and minority voters. Number 2, the Electoral College. Now, this is a basic facet of American democracy that many people just don't understand. The Electoral College is the actual system by which presidents and vice presidents are elected in the United States, and it's not by popular vote. What the Electoral College means is that each state, according to its own laws, appoints representatives who are actually the ones to vote. Now, how are those people chosen? It hugely depends. Every state has different laws. But what happens is that those electoral voters, members of the Electoral College, they're not actually bound to vote according to the popular vote of their state. Now, most of them do, but there's always the opportunity for them to choose otherwise. That's not what occurs in real life situations, but what does occur is that 48 states have a winner-takes-all system for their electoral votes. That means that if candidate A gets 51% of the vote, candidate B gets 49%, well, candidate A is going to get 100% of that state's electoral votes. And on 4 occasions in American history, that has led to the United States electing a president who did not win the popular vote. A president who didn't have the mandate of the American people to take office. Now, most of us don't even think about this because it so fundamentally undermines our notion of what democracy is. The United States is the only country in the world that has a system like this, and it was created by the Founding Fathers specifically so that if the people chose what they would think of as an improper candidate for president, the elites would have the ability to overrule that decision. So it's a little strange that in 2016 there's no signs of overturning this process or moving into an actually democratic system of elections. Number 1, superdelegates. Superdelegates are a little bit more obscure, but they have gotten a lot of attention this election cycle in the battle between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Now, these are present in the electoral process of both major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. For the Democrats, they're mostly elected officials. For the Republicans, they're mostly members of the party structure. What superdelegates are is people who exist alongside the ordinary delegates. Delegates are chosen by the popular vote of people who are voting in primaries and caucuses. So, if candidate A receives 51% of the vote in a state and candidate B receives 49% of the vote, ordinary delegates, 51 go to candidate A, 49 go to candidate B, to extremely oversimplify it. But then you've got superdelegates, and superdelegates are free to pledge their support to whoever they choose. It has nothing to do with voting, and they don't even align with the voting decisions made by people in their states. They just endorse a candidate because they're political people. They're people in politics. And they choose their candidate of choice, pledge their support, oftentimes before primary voting has even begun. So that's why we're seeing Hillary Clinton having a delegate advantage over Bernie Sanders, even in states where he won the popular vote in the primary. What's disturbing to me about superdelegates is that these are part of our electoral process that most people don't think about or even know about, but which exists solely to make sure that voters themselves don't have the final say on who has the ability to run for president. So, we're moving forward with this blog, considering, why is it that we ended up with this system in which there are only two parties? We choose among those two, and other options, they really don't exist for us in a practical way. It isn't a coincidence that it ended up like this. It was shaped by powerful forces that have existed since the founding of the United States. And these forces, well, they don't care too much about your vote or about what the American people want. They care about preserving and consolidating power. And we see that all throughout the structure of American government. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jess Cairns for Third Option Politics. Good night.